American Indian origins of fufu, from America to Africa. What is fufu? A pounded meal found in West African cuisine. It is a Twi word that originates from the Akans in Ghana. The word has been expanded to include several variations of the pounded meal found in other African countries, including Sierra Leone, Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire, Burkina Faso, Benin, Togo, Nigeria, Cameroon, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Central African Republic, and the Republic of Congo, Angola, and Gabon. Although the original ingredients for fufu are boiled cassava, plantains, and cocoyam, it is also made in a different ways in other West African countries. In Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Liberia, they use the method of separately mixing and pounding equal portions of boiled cassava with green plantain or cocoyam, or by mixing cassava, plantains, or cocoyam flour with water and stirring it on a stove. Its thickness is then adjusted to personal preference and it is eaten with broth-like soups. In Nigeria, fufu is common and made from fermented cassava. It is made solely from fermented cassava, giving it its unique thickness compared to that found in other West African countries. Cassava. Manioc or cassava is a plant whose starch-filled root produces more calories per acre of land than any other food crop except sugarcane. For thousands of years, it has been cultivated by indigenous people in what are now Mexico, Guatemala, northern Brazil, and the Caribbean. Some botanists believe it was being grown in the upper Amazon Valley as early as between 7,000 and 5,000 BC. In addition to cultivating manioc, which is also called manidoka or yucca, indigenous Americans developed a complex technology for turning this naturally poisonous plant into an edible food. Manioc has consequently become a dietary staple for millions of people throughout the world today. Manioc plants are propagated by stem cuttings that grow to bushy plants 6 to 9 feet high within a few months of planting. They are covered with large leaves and green flowers, and their roots weigh from up around 10 to 30 pounds. Per acre, manioc produces 6 times the carbohydrate value of wheat. Since the unharvested roots remain edible for 2 or more years after maturity, cassava provides its own convenient storage. Historically, sava served as a dietary mainstay for indigenous people who lived in tropical areas of South America. Manioc roots are depicted on 4,000-year-old pottery uncovered in what is now Peru. Because the cassava that grew in that area was non-poisonous or sweet variety, cooks prepared it by peeling and boiling the roots or cooking them over coals. Cassava. By about 3000 to 2000 BC, indigenous people were cultivating manioc in the lowlands of Venezuela and Colombia. From South America, cultivation spread to Central America and to the West Indian islands. Many of the plants grown in this area were of toxic variety, containing prussiac or hydrocyanic acid in small sacs under the coverings of the root. Because digestion breaks down the root cyanogenic glucosides, releasing cyanide into the body. Raw manioc of this type causes poisoning. American Indians were well aware of the differences between the two varieties of manioc and understood what scientists have only recently learned, that the difference between the two is not genetic, but is determined by the environment in which the manioc plant is grown. Columbus was the first European to observe and record American Indians raising manioc, calling it ajes. He noted it in his diary that the native people planted fields of tubers. The Portuguese observed American Indians growing manioc in what is now Brazil when they arrived there in the early 1500s. They watched Indians peeling raw manioc roots and then shredding them on graters made of stone chips set into wooden boards. Afterward, they squeezed the poisonous juice out of the presses or filled woven fiber tubes called ripetes, with manioc pulp. Weights that hung from The bottom of these tubes narrowed their diameter and compressed the pulp so that the juice would drip out. Once the maniac pulp was detoxified, indigenous people washed, roasted, and ground or pounded it into a meal called farina, and then baked it into cakes or flatbread. Maniac juice is normally highly poisonous because it contains hydrochloric acid. Indigenous people discovered the process of detoxifying maniac lyonase as a natural enzyme in cassava. It neutralizes the acid when the mixture is heated. They also knew that if the juice were to become too hot, above 167 degrees Fahrenheit, then the lyonase would break down and the process would not work. Manioc juice that has been thus heated to remove the poison also acts as a tenderizer, and it was used by Indians as soup stock and in sauces. Once the poison removed, the juice could also be boiled to become kasarep, used as both a flavoring and a meat preservative even today in British Guyana. Manioc juice continues to be used as a meat tenderizer in the United States. Cassava. In another process, Indians heated the starch that had settled from the bottom of the juice until the individual granules popped and clumped together to form tapioca. Today, in addition to serving as a base for the popular pudding, manioc starch is used for laundry starch and sizing. It is also sold as flour. Indigenous people who lived in what is now Peru detoxified manioc in a different way. Understanding that the fermentation will also break down the hydrochloric acid, they put cassava roots in water, allowed them to ferment, and then placed them in sacks wedged between boards to squeeze the acid out. Afterward, they dried pieces of root, toasted them, and pounded them into farina. In the Caribbean, British Guyana, and the northern part of Brazil, grated manioc also fermented and the pulp was made into a beverage that is still popular today. Because dried manioc bread keeps for up to 3 years and is more resistant to weevils than its hardtack, it was adopted by the Europeans as military and ship's rations. Manioc first crossed the Atlantic Ocean in 1569 on Portuguese slave ships returning from Brazil to Africa. The Spaniards also introduced manioc to the Philippines and eventually to Southeast Asia. Because of its carbohydrate content and its ability to tolerate drought and poor soils, the spread of manioc has changed the course of world history. The gift of manioc and the technology to make it edible has provided a staple food in the diet of 500 million people worldwide, who peel its roots and boil them or grind them into flour for bread. Farina remains as popular in parts of South America as it was thousands of years ago. In Africa, even the tops of manioc plants are eaten as vegetables. In Asia, manioc strips are deep fried and eaten like French fries. Most Americans and Europeans only encounter manioc in the form of meat tenderizer and tapioca processed cassava starch used in pudding and fruit pies. No usage of cassava. Translated from Ovida's Historia General et Natural de las Indias. These yucca roots are like thick carrots, even as thick as turnips from Galicia, but larger. They have a rough skin of a dark tawny color, and the inside are very white and thick like a turnip. From these yucca roots, they make large cakes, which they call kakabi. This is the ordinary bread of this island. After the men and women Indians have removed the skin from the yucca, they scrape them so that nothing of the skin remains, using shell stones or clam shells. They then grate the yucca on a rough stone. What they have grated, they put in a kukukan, a press made like a woven sack of tree bark. They fill the sack with grated yucca and hang it with weights so that it squeezes and wrings out all the juice, which falls through the joints of the woven press. After the juice is drained out, the remaining pulp is dried and made into thin cakes to bake as bread known as kakape. How fufu is made today. Peel cassava and wash it clean. Soak the cassava in water for 2 to 3 days until it becomes soft and slightly fermented. Drain the water, then mash or blend the cassava until smooth. Sieve the paste to remove fibers. Let it settle, pour off excess water, and keep the smooth paste. Cook the paste in a pot over low heat, stirring constantly. Turn and pound slash stir until it becomes thick, smooth, and stretchy. Shape into balls and serve with hot soup. Cassava in the Caribbean, from America to Africa. In Cuba, the dish retains its original African stem name, termed simply as fufu, or with an added descriptive extensions like fufu de plátano or fufu de plátano pintan. In the Dominican Republic, a beloved dish, mango, is very similar to fufu. Mango is made from mashed, boiled green plantains, typically topped with sautéed red onions cooked in vinegar. In Haiti, it is called tom tom and fufu. It is mostly made of breadfruit, but can be made of plantain or yams and is usually served with an okra-based stew or soup. Puerto Rican mofongo, in keeping with the Creole cuisine traditions of the Caribbean, tends toward a fufu of a much higher density and robust seasoning.